Hello and welcome to Property Roundup on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon, the show where we chat to industry experts to get a view on new trends emerging within the property industry. And the show is brought to you in partnership with Property District, your communications partner. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah-Kim Watchorn, food writer and photographer. Her website there is sarahkim.ie. And Sarah-Kim is here today to talk to us about her experience of getting a mortgage in Ireland. Sarah-Kim, thanks a million for joining us today. I'm going to start by asking, how has your journey to becoming a house owner, how is it going?
Hi, thanks for having me on board. Um, as you saw from my TikTok, it's been a rocky start. You can hear that I actually am sick because of this whole stressful process. Um, but I've been trying to buy a house or learn how to buy a house for the last few years. And I think with every little bit I do or every step I take, I learn that little bit more of information.
And as you're learning more, is it helping, or are you learning more about the hurdles? Because it has become increasingly difficult over the last decade and a half.
No, I'm learning loads of things that are actually helping me.
Great.
Learning things maybe like hints that you need to be able to like get that house, or maybe mistakes I've made that have hindered me from actually getting a house. Um, my most recent hurdle was I went sale agreed on a property, and I had been in a bidding war for a week. And it was quite a stressful process, as many people know. Won the bidding, and it was based in my hometown. So as you can tell, like I really love where I'm from, and anybody that knows me knows I want to live here, and I'm very passionate about it. And like my dream location, won the bidding process, went sale agreed, and then the auctioneer decided to give it to the lower bidder. Now, this I didn't think was possible to happen. And while before, and the TikTok you guys probably seen, was I had struggles with the bank, or I just wasn't aware of the 80% loan to value for a one bed, whereas I really needed to go for a two bed. And for my mortgage, which is, it's not that low, but it is pretty low, what you're able to buy for that is so small that a two bed is literally just really not in great condition, but I need something that's also habitable. So there's like so many layers to getting a house. It's not just seeing a house, buying it. It's like my restrictions are it needs to be two bed, it needs to be habitable. I can't buy something that needs to be done up because my mortgage limits me to buying something that already is habitable, obviously, and doesn't give me I don't have that percentage to spend after I purchase. I can't buy at auction because buying through mortgage at auction is far too risky. Far too risky. You just don't want to go there. I also can't buy land and build on it because I don't have that type of mortgage, which I've only learned by getting a mortgage. Yeah, so there's loads of things. So anyway, when I found this house, it was perfect. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was what I needed for now. So when that was stripped of me, that was devastating. But the bank actually tried to do everything in their power to get the house for me, which was like such a turn in the books. Because I thought the bank was against me, but I forgot that it's like life is working for us, not against us, you know. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, like let's just let this house go and hopefully something else will come, you know. But
That's a great attitude to have, Sarah Kane. But are you comfortable to share where your house hunt is
yeah,
geographically?
it's in Wexford.
Okay.
It was originally in Dublin, so I had found a house in Portobello, had gone sale agreed on that originally because a lot of my work is based, yeah, not only in Dublin but world and Irish. So I do travel a lot with my job, but most of it is based in Dublin. So I was thinking I need to be based in Dublin. So then I found the house in Portobello originally, and that was only a 1-bed. But I had bid on it and won it, obviously. And then it was when I went to my bank, they were like, "Oh, do you have the 65,000?" Like, I didn't have that in my account because I've spent quite a bit of the last year traveling. So I didn't have 65k in cash to spare, understandably.
Yeah, you see, look, there's a couple of things that you've said there that I want to break them down so that this can be really useful for other house hunters in your position.
Yeah.
So look, let's start with the loan to value, because I think most first-time buyers going in understand that if they're buying something that is in a habitable condition, that they only need 10%, and they might not be aware that actually if it's a 2-bedroom, and they will need extra income. The other side of it there, there's a couple of things. So first of all, you talked about being involved in the bidding war. Estate agents generally don't decide who gets the property. Generally, it's that they advise the homeowner, and generally that advice would be based on how certain is this prospect. So for example, by the way, it's a good thing that a higher bid that's conditional isn't counted the same as a lower bid that's unconditional. So do you know the one you missed out on, where you felt the auctioneer decided to give it to a lower bidder? Was that because of certainty? Do you know, was the other bidder a cash bidder, or were they did they have more certainty? Because did you have your approval in principle at that stage?
I did, yeah. I had my approval in principle, and the limiting factor for me, and probably why they went with the lower bidder, was because mine was up in, I had just under 2 weeks to get my letter of approval in, or like processed.
Yeah.
And I think once they figure that out, they must have advised the seller to go with a lower bidder then in this case. And the other bidder was partly a cash buyer, I'm aware of.
But partly a cash buyer means partly financed as well. So do you think the decision, the kind of deciding factor there was that your approval in principle only had another couple of weeks to run?
I think they thought I wouldn't get everything processed in time. But I've gone through this before. I had everything in order. I had my solicitor ready. The bank was processed everything super fast for me because they knew the time limit on it. Once they sniff any bit of it, once the auctioneer or estate agent sniffs any bit of unsure, they will go with the other person that's fully sure.
Okay, and look, to be fair, I also understand that, because there's a certainty that comes in, and it's the estate agent's job. At the end of the day, the estate agent doesn't work for the buyer; they work for the seller. Their job is to advise the seller where there is where there are competing bids. They need, it doesn't just come down to money. And by the way, that's a good thing. That will work in your favor sometimes as well, so there will be instances where that works in your favor, that it does come down to the better bid. It's not the highest bid, it's the better bid,
and they want to shift it as soon as possible as well, because they generally get higher commission when they shift it as fast as possible. No,
well, look, yes, there's an element to that, but believe it or not, it's not even about the higher commission or less commission. It's that actually all of the stats show us that the longer delay, if there's any element of delay, that increases the chances of something falling through. And there are so many reasons for that. It could be mortgage, it could be finance, it could be people's circumstances change, but any element of delay brings in a greater probability of the sale falling through for any number of reasons. So actually, it's not even about chasing higher commissions. It's actually about shortening the delay. But in many cases, that's what the sellers want as well, because and I suppose I'm definitely not here to defend estate agents, but generally speaking, it's the sellers who make the decision. Do you know, it's a little bit like gazumping. That's generally a buyer-led practice that sellers go along with. I
definitely wish I had an opportunity, or the bank had an opportunity to speak to the seller themselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Actually, could there be a more compelling case? In fact, in one way, does that show the importance in the digital age? You know, I'm a huge proponent of using technology, and does it show the importance of actually having, when I say a good working relationship, making sure that the person who's putting your case forward knows you very well, understands your position. When you were bidding, were you bidding in person or was it through online technology?
It was actually over email, which I feel like if it was an actual bidding, I don't know, I actually don't even know the word for it, but like if it was like, say, an auction style bid,
yeah,
you would see the other bids as well. But this was through email, so I had no idea how many other people were bidding on it. It felt just very rushed, obviously, because it was just like I was trying to get it finished as fast as possible because I really wanted the house and I knew that I had that time limit as well. I think there was a couple of people bidding and then it was down to like two of us. So I don't know.
Yeah, to be honest, Sarah-Kim, there's no excuse now for a lack of transparency because there are online bidding tools available to every estate agent to plug into their websites. And these are not expensive tools. So there's no excuse for no transparency with the bidding. You should always know how many people you're bidding against. And actually, with any of the online bidding platforms, you can actually see not just when the last bid was made, how much it was made, but you can actually track all of the bids to certain parties. So you can see, okay, well, this party were first in with the bidding. We know they're very motivated. They are jumping up in increments of 2,500 or 5,000 or something like that. So actually you can track a pattern. So actually bidding through email, that's frustrating. And actually there's, from a UX point of view, from a user and customer experience point of view, there's no excuse for that anymore. So actually that's one of the takeaways we'd like estate agents to get from this as well, that actually buyers don't like the lack of transparency if you're not using online bidding tools. And one thing I would say to you, I know you mentioned there, and it's just as an aside, that you couldn't buy through auction. Now, rules have been changed and brought in over the last decade to ensure that people who are getting a mortgage can buy through auction, but I fully appreciate it's you need to really be very organized to be able to do that.
You definitely can. Sorry, I should have phrased that differently. You definitely can, but there's no guarantee. And that's why it's like not worth it for me anyway. And I think if you're going to buy at auction, you just need to have cash.
Yeah. At any point with the properties, you've had a particularly frustrating journey, and unfortunately we hear it all the time. And some of this is down to bad practices across, across banking. Some of it's true to bad practices across estate agents still, not using tools that are available. But we have some really antiquated things like paying your booking deposit that has no security for either side. Have you ever gotten to the point of paying even the kind of 5% booking deposit?
No, I haven't got that far yet.
Okay,
that's the next hurdle, is it? Yeah.
Well, no, just I suppose to make people aware that actually you could pay your booking deposit and then have it handed back to you and said, actually, thanks, but we've changed our mind, which is an absolute kick in the teeth for home buyers. And by the way, that works both ways. A home buyer can get their booking deposit back and say to the seller, actually, no, we've changed our mind. Thank you. It's a bad system that doesn't serve either party. So it's just something that should have been done away with. It's just bad policy, bad practice, and it's something that shouldn't still exist. But where are you with your I fully appreciate the frustration you've been through, and really our purpose for talking to you today was to try see if there's something the industry can learn. Can we improve? Can we eliminate some of the delays, eliminate some of the risk, add in some greater certainty, add in greater transparency? So at least if you have the frustration of not winning a bid, you at least have some understanding as to why, or why the other party, the winning bid, was the winning bid. So what would you like the industry to know?
Where am I with it all is, so I think for people that are self-employed, they just really need to have everything together before they even think about, like, if they're like, oh, I don't want a house now. If you're even thinking about buying a house in 3, 4, 5 years time, start the process now, because I started this about 4 years ago. started saving. And you have to have, so most people don't know this actually. So I know most people now, lots of people now will be like, we know all this information, Sarah, but you have to have 3 years of bucks. So what I'm up against now, and what was so frustrating about losing that house, was because I worked my ass off for years. I took a little break last year because I actually just reached burnout. And what I'm up against now is that because of that break, it's impacted my bucks. So I'm reapplying for a mortgage this week because obviously that house fell through. My 6 months mortgage in principle was up, but also I had got the letter of approval. So by getting that cancels that mortgage in principle, and I have to reapply. So by reapplying it, and with that break in my income, it's obviously going to affect what like price I will get on my mortgage now. So I would just ask people to just like bear that in mind with whatever you're doing. And yeah, I guess that's where I'm at with it all at the moment. I don't know
That's
what
really
else.
frustrating. Are you dealing with a bank or a broker?
So I'm dealing with a bank, and I know everyone says deal with a broker, but the girl that I'm dealing with in the bank is honestly just right on my team at the moment. She rang that auctioneer last week for me. Like, she couldn't have been more helpful. And I way prefer dealing with people directly instead of having like that middleman, you know. And because I've developed a great relationship with my bank and the girl in the mortgage sector now, I feel like I just know exactly what I need to do. And maybe for people it's like really like I obviously was uneducated about what was involved in the whole buying a house procedure. And like, I don't know, does this come down to like needing to learn this in school or something else? But like, my God, there's more to it than just buying a house, you know?
Oh, there's so much there. First of all, I'm so happy to hear you say that you really feel like your bank is on your team. I love that. Which bank are you dealing with?
I'm dealing with AIB. I've just banked with them for so long, and my company is with them. Now, obviously, I had frustrations with them before, but in this last process, she has just gone out of her way to help me, and I just love that, you know.
I think that's amazing. Like, genuinely, I think this is genuinely the first time I've heard a mortgage applicant say to me, I really feel like the bank was on my team, because that's the way it should be. They should be on your team,
Yeah.
you know, and that you really should feel like they're on your side. So that's fantastic. So
and somebody the other day, somebody the other day just told me that they were actually dealing with a broker and had major difficulties with them. So it's interesting to see both sides of it, actually.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. And
Yeah.
look, we absolutely want the banks and the mortgage providers to really, you know, be helping to be helping their applicants. So that's fantastic to hear. In terms of undereducated, that's an interesting way to talk about the market. Because and the interesting thing is that actually generations of home buyers were uneducated on the market, and they just got a really harsh education as they were thrown into it and having to deal with everything. And there was never a feeling of being empowered. You know, I don't think there's ever been a generation that felt empowered when they came to getting a mortgage or finding property. But what do you wish you had have known?
Actually, just before I touch on that, I feel like people speak down to you when you aren't fully aware of all the goings on in the industry and what to do. Like, this is like having a kid for the first time. You haven't a clue. And instead of like banks or estate agents speaking down to you and using terms you don't know, maybe they would actually help you in the process, because if they help you in the process, you're helping them make money. That's how things work, you know. But it hasn't seemed to work in that way. Sorry, your question just again.
No, I actually, you know, before we move on to the second part of that, actually, I think that's a really important takeaway that is worth repeating there for the industry to take away. There should never be an instance where any consumer going through, whether they're buying or selling or their investors, feel like they're being spoken down to. So how could mortgage lenders and estate agents, how could they help educate buyers without making buyers or the consumers feel like they're being spoken down to?
Well, as you can hear, like, I'm a very confident person, but I've been made feel very, very small and little in this whole process. It's put a dampener on my spirit now, if I'm being honest. But maybe moving forward, oh God, I don't know. That's actually a really good question. I'm not sure how they can. I'm not actually sure how they could help, because they are only trying to do their job as well. And I suppose their expectation is that people know, but maybe to ask the question in a way that doesn't belittle somebody.
Yeah, no, I think that's really fair. I think that's a fair ask. And the reality is, we've had buyers agents, or essentially estate agents, who work exclusively for home buyers. We've had them now for kind of 2 decades in Ireland. But I know that most first-time buyers, they don't have the budget to pay for this. So I wonder, is there some sort of supports that the mortgage lenders could be providing? Where that, because it has never made sense to me, and I've been in the industry for almost 2 decades, it's never made sense to me that in such an important transaction, the seller, who's gone through this before, is fully representative or fully represented, but the buyers aren't. So it doesn't make sense that people feel alone on this journey, and we definitely don't want people to feel like they're, that their spirit is being diminished. And, you look, unfortunately, what I'm hearing from you today is not unique. We're hearing this more and more, and it's trying to understand, where the heart of the problem lies. I find that no matter what issue we're talking about, in terms of whether it's for rental, whether it's challenges that investors are facing, and buy-to-let investors, residential investors, or home buyers, whether they're first-time buyers or trying to trade up or down for whatever reason, it all comes back to supply, that we don't have enough supply, and we don't have a variety of supply. So even where there are, and in 2023, we have an increased volume of properties on the market. While it mightn't feel like that to most people, there are more properties available than there were this time last year. In some regions of the country, it's up to 60% greater supply. It's still historically low, but we have greater supply this year than we did last year. But there's no variety of the type and the quality. So that's a real problem. But I'm interested, when you feel that you were really uneducated in the process, like, what do you wish you had have known, and how can we get that information out to people?
I guess the two bed and the 1 bed loan to value, that's really important. So for a 1 bed, you need 20%. For 2 bed, you need 10%. So that's really important information, because I was looking at a 1 bed. It basically was a 2 bed, but it was down as a 1 bed. And that's important information. What else do I wish I knew? Just even in terms of what's required when you go through each process. So when you go sale agreed, what do you do then, or what happens? And I feel like I only figure out what happens, and I'm only like given information when that process happens. So maybe I don't know where. I'm sure this information maybe is online or something, but I thought this whole process would be way easier than it is, yeah.
Okay, no, it's interesting, because just when you made the comment there earlier in the interview, it's like, how early do you start preparing for this? Like, where do you learn about this? Is it back in school? And while it might seem a bit ridiculous to talk about in school being trained on how to buy your first home, actually there's kind of a larger question about financial education at school. And we know, not just in Ireland, we know globally that people are not being well enough educated on the realities of everyday finance in school, when actually that's exactly when they should be learning those lessons. Arguably, they should be learning them from primary school, but we're leaving school with very little financial education. And I paid a sharp price for that myself during the last crash. So it's something I'm very aware of, and it's something that I feel really strongly should happen. But it's almost knowing, you know, how far to bring it back. And I suppose one of the things we should point out to any home buyers listening in here today, you know, that obviously I need to point out that you have an added layer of complexity because you're not going in as an employee, you're self-employed.
And single as well is probably another fun element to this.
Yeah, like, to be honest, being a single self-employed entrepreneur going in to apply for a mortgage, there probably isn't more of a disadvantage you could give yourself unless you have dependents. I mean, that's the only way you could disadvantage yourself more.
Thank God there's none of them.
Well, I can tell you, I was a self-employed single parent going through my first application, and but it was a different time 20 years ago. It was a very different time. I wouldn't be able to do today what we could do 20 years ago, but I understand the challenges there. But actually then for people who are self-employed, because look, I you know, and I'm conscious of time and we need to finish up, but I am also conscious that, like, there's a lot that we've talked about here that could be improved. So actually being self-employed, is there a way to make the mortgage process more straightforward for people who are self-employed? You know, 3 years is a very long time to look at when, quite frankly, you could be an employee. So for example, an employee of yours could go in, and using the same organization, they would just need to show 6 months of their salary, and certainly no more than 12 months. So through your business, if you don't mind me asking, are you an employee of your business?
I'm an employee of my business, but it's my company.
Yeah. So you know, there is an argument there that if you were to bring in another employee, they would just be treated as an employee, even though it's exactly the same business, exactly the same risk. So I wonder, have we not done enough to fix the mortgage applications for self-employed people? Because it's crazy.
I think that honestly, my bank has taken into account so many factors within my company, and even they've taken into account what my company earns rather than what I earn, you know. So I think that is a great element. But there's not enough taken into account. Like I obviously have earned quite a bit to be able to do this all by myself, you know. But I think 3 years is far too long. And I know that there's like the limiting factor of like they need to see that it's sustainable, or that like the money is going to come from somewhere, you know. But I don't know, there has to be some other element to make it like a little bit easier. Like 3 years is a long time, you know.
Sarah-Kim, before we finish up, and thank you so much, I genuinely appreciate you being so honest and forthcoming with the information, because we need the industry to hear this, you know, because there's, you know, we talk, a lot of what we talk about in the marketplace is based on assumptions, and we don't really get a lot of direct feedback from consumers who come through the other side. You know, the only bit of feedback we get is usually on the day of handover, where it's a little bit like childbirth. You forget the pain that came before it, and you just feel the delight of having the keys in your hands, that it's like, great, we're here, great, thank you to everybody who helped us, that's it. Whereas actually we need to get a better understanding of what's happening along the process. But have you made any inquiries about the housing for all supports for buyers? So in terms of shared equity, or have you made contact with your local authority to inquire about their home loans? Because actually, once you've been refused more than, I think, 3 times, then there's a different route for you in terms of local authority mortgages. Under Housing for All, there's a number of supports there, and we actually have them posted on the iPropertyRadio website, a list of all the Housing for All supports for both tenants, for renters and for home buyers. But in terms of home buyers, if you were willing to look at a property that needed a bit of work, particularly now you're talking about looking in the Wexford area, there were grants of up to 30,000 for properties that have been vacant for up to 2 years, and that can be increased by a further 20,000, so up to 50,000 for properties that are derelict. So there are supports there. Would you be willing to even consider and look at some of those?
Yeah, and I was made aware of them because one of my dreams is to do up an old property, but just with the limitations of my mortgage, I can't buy somewhere that has been um uninhabited for so long because it's like not a habitable state. But yeah, one of my dreams is to do that. So yeah, maybe down
Well,
the line, but
Well, you're talking about the limitations of your mortgage, but actually, as we stand today, you don't have a mortgage. So
yeah.
I would suggest you reach out to your local authority, talk to them about their home loan schemes, and see what you might be eligible for. And that might just open up a whole new area for you. And in terms of value, I mean, look, quite frankly, I've always been a purist in terms of if you can get a property, add value to it, one in an area that you like. I mean, you're passionate about the area that you were, and about the Wexford area. There's still properties there where value can be unlocked if you're willing to do the work, and particularly if that's work that you'd like to do. And given your work as a photographer, I'd love to see you document that journey. So look, that's just one suggestion for you. I understand it might not be the ideal. It would definitely require more work, but the outcome in 2 to 3 years time could be much better.
Yeah, I think anyone who's self-employed isn't afraid of a bit of hard work. So definitely willing.
Very good. Okay, before we finish up today, first of all, let me thank you for being so forthcoming there. But also, I genuinely want to wish you the best of luck, and any help or support or guidance that we can give you. Please reach out. Outside of this show, please reach out. We'll certainly be willing to help you in any way that we can. Do you have kind of a message for home buyers who might be, or intending home buyers who might be in a similar position, or perhaps to the industry? Do you have a message for the industry?
No, I think with people, maybe just keep going. I think don't lose hope. Like hopefully they're a property. I've heard loads of people that they knew when the property came that they're in now, that they went through all this struggle, that they knew that the ones that fell through weren't meant for them. So I think just keep going and we'll get there.
Very good. And Sarah-Kim, I loved when you said earlier in the interview that, life is generally working for you, and it doesn't always feel like that in the moment. But I don't want to give kind of a platitude when we know that there are system failures here that are also, so we don't want to confuse the universe with, like I said, system failures across our mortgages and our housing policy. But I think it's a great attitude to have, and genuinely best of luck. Anything that we can do to help, we certainly will. And please stay in touch and keep us updated on your journey. I genuinely mean that. And reach out to your local authority, because there are so many supports there that are not being fully availed of. And there just might be an exciting opportunity there. So that's all we've time for today. My thanks to Sarah-Kim Watchorn for joining us and for sharing her expertise with us today. Also, our thanks to producer Carol Tallon and to the podcast production team at Hear Me Roar Media. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out other real estate and construction shows on iPropertyRadio. Huge thanks to our show sponsor today, Property District, your strategic communications partner, for making these kind of conversations possible. And thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of Property Roundup for iProperty Radio.